Hello everyone, this is Living Off the Grid in the City, and I would like to introduce today the Solar Energy Calculator. It is an application, a spreadsheet that I created to dispel and basically null and cancel all of the myths out there, all of the lies, all of the exaggerations, all of the fantasy performance numbers that you hear from YouTubers, video makers, podcasters that do videos on solar energy, renewable energy, or anything that's sustainable, any kind of video that utilizes sustainable energy equipment such as solar. A lot of them lie, a lot of them don't give you enough information, a lot of them just exaggerate and outright bluff in the performance that they claim they have. A lot of people claim that they are running 100% off the grid and they are running all kinds of electric appliances, all kinds of electronics, loads, tools, all kinds of air compressors, heavy machinery, and they're either not telling you exactly how much it costs them, which could be in the tens of thousands of dollars. They may not be telling you the effort, resources that went into running those pieces of equipment, or they may just be lying. They may just be saying that they are running off the grid and completely on solar and batteries when they are really not. They may only be running those pieces of equipment for very short periods, perhaps minutes to tens of minutes, and that is it. And they are not divulging this, they are not letting you know straightforward what they are doing. So, this calculator allows you to get rid of all of the guesswork, allows you to, before you even commit to any kind of technology, before you even purchase any kind of equipment, or after you purchase the equipment, it can tell you exactly what that equipment is going to do for you. And of course, the ideal thing is to make your calculations, do your calculations, your math, your planning before you make any investments. That way, you more smartly do those investments and purchases or acquirements. And of course, that is the ideal thing, to plan ahead. But if you have already purchased some or all of your equipment, you may still run this calculator and see exactly what that equipment is going to do for you, what kind of performance it will have as far as running energy or solar energy. Again, this is a solar energy calculator. Another reason why I made this application or spreadsheet is because of the low quality and very low performance and reliability of the apps out there, the device based apps, whether it's on the App Store from Apple or the Google Play Store from Google, or any other of the stores, or even the Microsoft applications store. Who knows what they're calling that nowadays? But they basically provide you the very top applications with the highest ratings are quite poor as far as the details they give you, the performance, and the accuracy. I believe is quite low. Some of them may be getting a bit better by now, but I created this basically so I can have more control over the application itself. I know the formulas that go in it. As you may, I will have this very same application freely available if you want to download it. I will also go through some of the, or most, if not all, of the formulas that I used for this application. That way you can create your own if you so would like. You also, again, may download this one freely available. Is going to have zero trackers, zero bugs, zero any kind of malware or adware, so don't worry about that. If you don't trust it, then you are welcome to create your own. All you need is a little bit of knowledge with spreadsheets such as Excel, or LibreOffice, Calc, and similar applications. I believe there's one for Apple as well, not remembering the name as of now, but you may create your own. We'll show you again some of the formulas that I created for the solar energy calculator, and we'll jump right in. So this is the calculator. It's nothing but a spreadsheet that I created all in one place. Another reason why I designed and created it is because I want to have all of my planning and preparedness calculations for solar in one place, one sheet that could do both off-grid, as you can see here on this left side section, and also a on-grid area, or grid-tied area, better said, here on this right section. As you can see, I do have directions on this for you to follow step by step, so you can get familiar with using this. It's quite, I believe, to be quite logical, quite easy to follow, and as you can see, it does have numbered sections. Again, these numbered sections are in numerical order, so you can follow by number 1, section 2, then go over to section 3, etc. The same thing goes for the grid-tied solar home energy calculator. You just go from left to right. So we'll begin with this side of the application, which is the off-grid solar energy calculator. Again, you begin with the number 1, desired appliance requirements, and just to tell you right off the bat, when it says desired, that means usually that this section you're going to be inputting your own data, and it's going to be, some of it is going to be automated. It's going to have formulas already for you to see the results in totals. There's going to be several of these with calculations, with formulas that calculate, and gives you different types of information like totals, products, etc. So when you see a white cell, that means you can input or change the information in that cell. Gray cells, gray areas, you don't want to change any of that stuff, because those are usually your results, which are behind a formula. As you can see, there's a formula there. I may want to go ahead, or you may want to go ahead and lock all of the gray areas on your application if you decide to make one or get this one, and leave the white cells unlocked. So to move on with the desired appliance requirements, this area here, section, is basically your planning area for the totals of the equipment, electronics, appliances, anything that runs on electricity. You can put it here. This is presumably for a project that you may have, that you may want to run on solar. Basically, if you want to run, for example, an RV, recreational vehicle, if you want to run a motorhome, if you want to run the equipment and electronics and appliances in a home, an apartment, a cabin. It could be also a small home or a tiny home. It could be a homestead in a isolated location, remote location. It doesn't matter. It could be a tent with some equipment like laptops in the North Pole. It doesn't matter where and what you are trying to run. If it's electric and you want to include it to be ran with solar energy, you can put them here. Of course, this may or may not be enough space if you want to include a lot of equipment or a large amount of equipment, but you can bundle them. You can add the values here and bundle them to use this space. Or if you want to get a bit crafty and you're feeling like doing it, you can expand this sheet, expand it somehow, and add more space, more cells, more area that you can put more items. Of course, you're going to have to adjust the formulas, make sure that they cover all of the areas, and that they don't break this. For example, this main formula here that utilizes all of these cells here right above it. So again, you have to be quite familiar, just a bit familiar maybe, with Excel, spreadsheets, etc. This one here again is LibreOffice Calc. And again, you want to put your device name here. You want to put the rated watts of that device that you can find in the label or on the label for that particular device. That label is the manufacturer's label, usually on the device itself, whether it's on the outside, on the side. Sometimes it brings it in a separate location like a box or manual, but you can easily find that information most of the time. If it's an older piece of equipment that has that information rubbed off, erased, or ripped off, you may want to basically estimate it, come close to what it's supposed to be by comparing it to another piece of equipment that's similar in size, rated wattage, electrical information, etc. So here we have, for example, a microwave. A microwave is usually from 1,000 to 1,600 watts. Sometimes they are 1,800, 2,200, depending if they are larger commercial type. So this is a pretty standard microwave for a household, 1,200 watts, and you want to put that there. You want to put the amount of time in decimal mode or decimal way, in a decimal way, per hour. So this one is using an entire hour, so it's just going to be 1 or 1.0. For example, this one right here is just going to be used 15 minutes, this printer, per day. So you put 15 minutes in decimal mode, which is 0.25. If you're going to use it for 2 hours, you put 2. If you were to use that for 2.5 hours, it would be 0.25, etc. You notice that the more time you use an item, for example, if I change that to 2, look at this number right here, the number goes up for the watt hours. Watt hours is nothing but the multiplication of your rated watts and your time in hours as decimal. So this is the amount of power that you are, in theory, supposed to use in a 24-hour period or a day in watt hours. This unit is very important to convert it to that and not just leave it in watts, because you're working on a daily basis and you want to know what watt hour requirements each item has, because if you look at here, your batteries also work with watt hours available, and your solar panels work in watt hours available. So you want to keep a common or like unit to work with. That way you are standard across the board and you are more accurate, much more accurate in your estimations, your calculations, your budget, all of that good stuff. So once you run down this list, put your watts, put the time in decimal mode, and this is going to automatically calculate all of those values and add them up down here. You're going to have this total watt hours requirements for this project. This is presumably a project for a small home or a tiny home, as they call them. As you can see, it only has a window AC for cooling. It really has no heater and very few items running. So this is a tiny home, or it could be thought as maybe a small RV or someone living in a van that wants to run these items, perhaps a motorhome or trailer, smaller. And this is the requirements in watt hours. That's going to transfer automatically to this area right here and other areas perhaps, but let's move in order here. So it's going to transfer to this area right here, as you can see, area 2 or section 2. It transferred there. This is your required for appliance total watt hours, which we are at 14,385 watts per hour. So that tells you what you need, what this project or all of these equipment require. And this right here is your desired battery storage capacity in liquid, or excuse me, in lead acid or absorbed glass mat type batteries. And I put those there because that formula that I have here, it's done for those types of batteries. That formula would be slightly different. Perhaps the only difference would be this number right here, the number 3. If it was any other type of battery, such as lithium ion, lithium iron, or nickel iron, or other types of batteries. Different batteries have different chemistry, different capabilities, different performance features, and all of that good stuff. So this is for a lead acid or AGM battery. We have here 12 volt battery. It could be 24 volts. It could be 48 volts. There are different types of batteries. Could be even a 6 volt. But we'll leave it at 12. That's a very common battery. And 100 amp hours. This rating is already built into the battery. When you purchase a battery, this is a number that is very important and that should be listed on the battery. Sometimes it's on the model. Sometimes it's on other parts of the manufacturer's label or sticker. And you want to put, this is again a battery bank that you are building. This is a desired battery storage capacity. So you want to tinker with this number until you closely match this number. That's what you really want, to match that number. So let's go at 33 batteries. We are still at 13,200, not quite the 14,385 that we need. So let's go to 36. See where that puts us. That puts us at 14,400 watt hours, right above the number that we need, which is basically where we want it. If you want to tinker with this at all, and you want to really use lithium ion or lithium iron or even nickel iron batteries, then you would have to tinker with this formula. For example, if you want to use lithium ion or lithium phosphate, then this number is going to be about 1.2 instead of 3. What that means, what that 3 meant, is that in a lead acid battery, you're only using about a third of the total capacity of that battery. The usable capacity is only about a third to maybe about 40%, not so much more than that. Maybe 50% for HEMs. But for a lithium ion is quite close to 1, not quite, maybe 1.25, 1.25. That means that you have about 75% of the battery capacity available to you for use. So you want to divide it by 1.25 for lithium ion or lithium phosphate, which are pretty close. So that's what you want to do. In this case, we're going to leave it at 3 because we're going with the lead acid or even AGM. We'll leave it at that. If anything, that is very conservative, and the batteries may overperform this, which is okay. As long as you overshoot, it's all good. You don't want to undershoot and run out of juice or power charge. So we move on. This is section 2. We move on to section 3, which is down here, required solar watts. So the required solar watts is basically what your batteries require to stay charged, to keep this kind of charge, to keep it more or less charged to where you can use these items without them losing power. So you want to look at down here and look at this number right here, average insolation hours per day. An insolation map you can find online. You can see your area, how much insolation or hours of sunlight per day that it gets on average throughout the year. For my area is close to 4. Your area may be 2, maybe 4.5, maybe 3.5, maybe 1, maybe 5.5 or 6. If you live like in the Nevada or Sahara areas of the world, in the Arabian Peninsula, if you live in the Middle East, maybe it's going to be closer to 6. If you live anywhere near Death Valley here in the Southwest. But if you live here like I do in the Southeast, we're looking at between 3 to 4 in most areas. Florida, perhaps some areas in Florida get 4.5 to 5, but that is as good as it gets for the Southeast. So this automatically calculates, this formula that I have here automatically calculates how many modules you need. And the way it does that is by looking at this here, the next section, section 4, desired solar regeneration capacity. So depending what you put here is what you're gonna get here. So if you get modules or solar panels that are 320 watts, you're gonna need 11 modules. If you go weaker, smaller, 300 watts, you're gonna need 12 modules. If you go smaller, 280 watts, you're gonna need even more modules. You can go even also higher, 420 watts. You need less modules. Of course, they're going to be more expensive. And you can also adjust the number of watts, the number of modules that you really could afford, that you want to get. Again, you want to match this number here to this one, to this requirement, as much as you can. But if you cannot, then you do as best you can with the available funds or available equipment that you have. Let's say you have 6 420 watt panels, and that gives you 10,080 watt hours. Not quite the 14,385 that is required, but it may be all you have. And it just may take a bit longer to replenish your battery storage, which is okay. But if you want to go full bore and cover 100% of your need, wattage per hour need, you go by this number that's already given to you, and it will cover this with 15,120. If you were to go with 8, it'd be slightly under. So it knows, this formula knows that you have to go with 9, so you can cover this and go maybe a little above. So that is section 4. Section 5 is nothing but a estimator for your cost. It is somewhat accurate. That is, I believe it gives you value. It gives you quite a bit of an idea, a very close idea of what a project would cost. You would have to be you would have to do some shopping and a little bit of research and find out what each module costs. So for example, a 420 watt panel nowadays is very close to the same amount, about $1 per watt, including shipping, taxes, all of these other fees. So let's leave it at 420 per panel. Then battery cost per battery for a 12 volt 100 amp hour battery. I have found out that they are running more or less at $150. They've jumped up in price quite a bit lately. And that's per battery, of course. So this number right here comes from your wattage requirements. That is how big your inverter must be. Your inverter is basically the piece of equipment that could transform or generate energy from your solar panels. And your batteries, basically your batteries, not really your solar panels. It takes energy from your batteries and inverts it into AC energy, alternating current. So you need about at least this much watts per size. Watt hours. You don't need exactly this watt hours. You have to basically turn this into watts, because all of the inverters, they are rated in watts, not watt hours. So that is a quick correction I have to make. So we really want to, as I just made that correction, we really want to use this number right here instead of that. We really want to use this number, which is what we did. This formula is now extracting this number from here, which is your required watts for the modules. It's a good number to go with, and you want to use that for your inverter. An inverter about that size, a good quality pure sine wave inverter, is going to cost you about $6,500 if you get a good deal, I believe. And then here, down here, labor cost per watt is what usually contractors, electricians, PV specialists and technicians charge you when they do a project for you by the watt. They charge you from, let's say, 50 cents, 75 cents, $1, $1.50, $2, $3, $4 per watt, depending on the company, the warranties they offer you, the conveniences, the deal that you get, whether they are honest or not. So $1, I believe it to be quite reasonable. And once you put that in, the wire and hardware markup amount, I have it as 10%. I believe it to be quite reasonable. And this is the total number that you get, this $32,128 to cover 100% of these items. And this is a reason why I made this application, because this number may be a shocker for many people. To cover the energy requirements of a tiny home, a very small tiny home such as this, requires this much, and this is very conservative, believe me. And you may be shocked by that, but in reality, you have to think that this system is going to provide 100% of the power required by this small, very small home. So you're not going to be paying, in theory, for power as long as this system is working for you. And again, you can always expand on the system, and the savings that you're going to have over time as the utility energy prices go up, make this number really smaller and smaller as you think about all of those factors. You may have to put that on a loan, you may have to save for it, you may have that money already, but you may be very reluctant to invest that money in a solar energy system to run such a small place. But you're really, if you do think like that and are reluctant, you're really not thinking of the long term. And I'm saying long term, I mean only about 6 to 7 years, which is not long, not a whole lot of time. The system will most likely pay itself off. And just to show you, I just ran a quick calculation here and calculated how much money you would be spending in 7 years if you pay a bill, a modest bill of about $320 per month on average for your electric. And that is assuming that your power energy bill is not going to go up in those 7 years at all, which is quite unbelievable. But let's assume that it won't go up. And this total right here is $26,880 that you will be paying to your utility company in 7 years. So that is quite close to your $32,000. That is a good chunk of that. Maybe another year could get you there. 8 years, maybe 8.5. And it is all cream on top. After that, it is nothing but, free, pretty much free energy in these systems. If you purchase a very quality system, perhaps apart from the batteries that you may have to replace in 5 to 6 years, the system should last you much longer than 8 years, perhaps 12, 15, 18 years. I myself have right now a solar panel that has been working for about 12 years, and it is still outputting about 85 to 90% of what it used to outputs back when I bought it in 2010, excuse me. And that is it for the off-grid solar energy calculator. Of course, this has instructions here in case you need to go back to those instructions, in case you forget, in case you have questions about any area, and they are all here. So moving on to the next area of this calculator, which is the grid-tied solar home energy calculator. This is basically a copy or a iteration of a NEC, National Electrical Code form, and the form is the table 220.42, which is basically a table that helps you calculate the total home power requirement of a residential house or home. So I found it useful to use that as a template for this calculator, because most people live in a home, residential home, and when they're thinking of grid-tied solar, the first thing they want to do is see what they require to do three things mainly: how much it would take, or what it would take to cover my energy needs for my home at 100% coverage, 50% coverage, that's the next option, or 25% coverage. Of course, you can choose anything in between, but these three are basically what give you a good idea of what it would take as far as equipment, effort, resources, money to get those types of coverage. Of course, if you get 100% coverage, that means that you will be replacing, offsetting your energy use from the utility company. That means that you are going to be zeroing out your energy bill in theory, and you won't be paying the energy company a penny. Of course, this is an average. It could go up and down depending on the month, the conditions, the weather. One month you could go over, the next month you could be a little under and pay the electric company. When you go over, the electric company owes you either a credit or money, depending on the agreements with the electric company. I don't believe many of them, if any, give cash anymore. They just give you credits, if even that. So we'll begin. Home information. You want to enter again, white cell your square footage of your home. In this case, this is a very tiny home at 750 square foot. And then you want to move down to your kitchen appliances. How many of them? Let's say, let's forget about all this. Let's forget about that, and let's just start fresh with another home. And we want to run, let's say, 4 extra kitchen appliances. Let's say we have a microwave, a blender, a coffee pot, and then we have a toaster. 4 items. And this is apart from your electric range. Don't include your electric range here, because that is included here. Electric home appliances, not including cooling or heating. So if you are going to use an electric range, let's say a common or conventional electric range is about 12,200 watts. The one for a tiny home, a very small and high efficiency one, is going to be close to half to that, so it's about 6,100 watts. Again, this information you can find in or on the appliance itself. It should be a label from the manufacturer. Electric clothes dryer is normally more or less, of course, about 5,900 watts. Half that for a very, very high efficiency one, and small one for a tiny home at 3,450 watts. And a water heater. Let's say you want to go electric. A lot of times people go with LPG, liquid gas propane, or liquid propane gas, and they basically zero this out. They take that out of the loop, out of the equation. But let's say that we are going with electric, and we have a very small, maybe like a 40, maybe like a, no, not even a 40, a 20-gallon water heater, which is a tiny one. And let's say it goes to 1,600 watts. So that's going to calculate these things for you per that form that I mentioned, the form on the NFPA's NEC. And is going to do most of the math for you. And you come here to your air conditioner requirements. Again, you're looking at a tiny home here in this situation. If you're looking at a normal or conventional home, you may want to follow this or read and type here the exact wattage of your unit. That's for the entire unit, whether it's for heating or cooling. You put one or the other. Here, so let me make a quick correction here. That should be white. So here you enter total heating load. Let's say it's, if you have a air conditioning that heats up, you put that here. You would put close to that if it's a conventional home. For a 4-bedroom home, you may have a smaller one if you have a smaller home, or you may have a larger one if you have a larger home. Let's say here for your cooling, normally it would be close to 3,500, but we're going with a window AC for a tiny home, which is about 1,600. So of course we did not put any heating. You're not going to use heating, so you're going to have to put either your cooling or your heating, whichever is higher, on this slot or cell. So of course the only one available is your cooling, 1,600. Put that there. It's going to do some calculations for you, and it's going to give you, by this point, this number, which is the total home power requirement in watts. And we have it here. Is 22,923. This is not watt hours, this is watts. So voltage, if you were to use any other voltage different than the ones that are usually available here in the Americas, North America, which is 220 for households, dual phase or single phase as they call it. And you can adjust that voltage, but I would recommend you leave it alone if you live here in North America. And you also have available your amperage, which is something that it is automatic. You're not going to change that. Your amperage is basically the total amperage required for the home, and that will help you size if it's for a new construction. Usually the electrician will do this for you. This is a new construction. It will help you size your entrance panel main breaker, what they call your entrance breaker or your main breaker is going to be at least this size here, 104, which the next standard size here in the Americas may be maybe like a 125 amp. And then you jump to the next area, which is your desired solar panel capacity. Again, the word desired means that there's a lot of adjustments here that you can make depending on your choice of solar panels per watts. Let's say you go with 420 watts. Your insolation hours again. Let's say you live in an area that only gives you about 3 hours average per year. Maybe you live in the Northeast or Midwest. And let's say you can also adjust the number of modules or the numbers of panels that you can have or that you wish to have. But then again, the computer tells you here exactly how many you need to cover 100%, how many panels you need to cover 50%, and how many you need to cover 25%. So whatever percentage you want, that's however many panels you can put here. Let's say you want to cover 100% of that tiny home. You're going to have to match this number. And voila, this number right here in watt hours is going to closely match this number right here. This number right here in watts. So even though we're talking about watt hours, that is basically all you need. You don't need to match this number because you're going to be tied to the grid. You're not going to be providing your house with this many watts, which is 104 amps worth of power, all the time. That is going to be available already from the grid. That is just what your house requires at any given point, whether it's at night, whether it's in the middle of a storm, cloudy. If you're grid tied, that means you're tied to the utilities. You're going to have that available. What your modules are doing, they're trying to replace this by providing basically 22,680 watt hours per day to offset this requirements. That way you pay little or nothing to the power company. And that is it. These are the instructions for this parts of the calculator, the grid tied solar home energy calculator. I personally spend most of my time here because this is my specialty, off-grid solar systems. And you may be more specialized or more interested in this area. Others may be interested in this area here. But this is again an introduction to this application, and just to let you know that it's going to be freely available. I'm going to post the link on the comments or notes section of this content, so please look for that. And of course, you may tweak it, change it, improve it. You may get with me if you do some improvements and share it. And you may also share it with others. And again, this is, I believe, to be much, much better, much more transparent than many of the applications out there. You know exactly what you're working with. You may want to maybe dig into the formulas a little bit and why the formulas are what they are. And for example, you may want to see why batteries capacities change depending on the type, and how much of a battery you can really depend on as charge, as usable charge. And there are many other things that you can learn about. You may already know all of that, but it is, I believe, something worth checking out, looking at, tinkering with, sharing, improving. So let me know in the comments section. You may contact me in other ways. So hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.